The all is mind. The universe is mental. The Kabbalah. Welcome to Lesson 9 of the Alchemical Cabala, the cube of space, the current of Ayin, the eye. We are now entering the current Ayin, the current of west below on the cube of space. Again, but this time we are entering the stream of consciousness from the previous current of Lamed, the justice key. It's said no one steps in the same river twice, because everything that appears in what we call manifestation is always changing. So on this trip, we started up at the northeast corner. We traveled along the path current of Taith. We've just descended down through the Justice Key and Lamed, and now we are in the west below current. We're merging into right now path of and the current of Ayin, the eye, and we'll be traveling towards the south. All appearances change. That said, the currents of the intelligences of the cube of space are consistent in their nature. They're like the colors of the light spectrum, each vibrating at a specific frequency. And this is what we tune into when we are engaged in or navigating the currents on the cube of space. Each current is a specific intelligence or aspect of the all within which we live, move, and have our being. Because we are made in the image of our Creator, these currents are within us as well. They might be thought of as facets of a perfect jewel, each reflecting a unique and brilliant color of the one, and each holding a particular place within the spectrum and geometry of the whole. The letter Ayin means eye. It's said that the eye of the Lord is in every place. When we understand that this eye is pure awareness itself, this becomes more understandable. The Master Jesus said, "If thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be filled with light." So, we're going to discuss Plato's cave. In the story of Plato's cave, there are a group of people who have lived all of their lives in chains, facing a blank wall. There is a fire and a great light behind the people that they cannot perceive or see because their heads and faces are chained in such a way as to have them always facing towards the blank wall of the cave. The people see shadows on the wall. This is all they see. And they watch these shadows projected on the wall from objects passing behind them and in front of the fire that is behind them as well. They react to and interact with these shadow figures on the wall of the cave as if these images are all that is real. The shadows are all they can perceive, and as such, their only known reality. The story goes on to explain how one of the prisoners is able to break free from their chains and turns their head, and it is amazed to perceive a light that he can now see behind him. With curiosity and great courage, he follows this light and sees an opening high above the cave with an even greater source of light streaming through it. So he climbs upwards, ascending from out of the depths of the cave towards this opening. And as he emerges from the cave, he is blinded by a light so bright he simply cannot see anything. It takes him a little while for his vision to adjust and acclimate and start to see at this level he finds himself in, above the cave. After he is adjusted, he now sees a magnificent world of light, of unspeakable beauty and wonder. A world that previously he had no idea existed, but now sees and knows this world of the sun to be not only real, but he sees and recognizes it as the source of everything and everything that is perceived, and only as shadows in the cave below. After some time in this ecstatic state, he is suddenly overcome with compassion. Thinking of his brothers and sisters who are in the cave below, knowing they are bound to believing only in the appearances of shadows, and knowing they would never believe him if he were to return to tell them the higher world, unless they were to experience the world of the great light above for themselves. For the first time, he recognizes he has a real will, a free will, as his will is united with the source of the light he now perceives as his very self. So that's part of the story of Plato's cave. For now we see through a glass darkly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then shall I know, even as also I am known. 1 Corinthians 13:12. All right, so recall last week, we saw how in this world, all the surface appearances we see on our smartphones, our computer screens, our television sets, and virtually all of our media and communication devices have behind those appearances and sounds transmissions of nearly endless permutations of the combination of zeros and ones. And yet here we are, swimming in the sea of zeros and ones, coloring our whole existence with meaning that we project onto the screen of life. We don't often perceive this because we are habituated to reacting to the perceived world at the level of surface appearances. And we often believe that the meanings we have attached to our perceptions are the real things themselves. Imagine you are sitting in a movie theater or at home engaged in a movie on the television. Notice how you tense up during suspenseful scenes. You might cry at sad scenes. This is perfectly fine. There is nothing wrong with this. But you know it's a movie. So why do you do this? Why do we do this? We know it's a movie. This example we have all experienced shows us that knowing a thing intellectually doesn't actually free us from being deeply affected by and reacting to the appearances of things, does it? So one might deduct from this that knowledge of the intellect is only part of the equation that leads us to real liberation. The path of Ayin on the tree of life connects the sphere hold, the intellect, to the sun, the heart of the tree, the central self. Remember that the intellect is 1/10 of the tree of life, and the physical world, Malkut, is 1/10 of the tree of life. So during movies, we forget we're watching a movie. And we identify in our consciousness with the images that we perceive on the screen. And this is precisely what we have done as self-conscious spiritual beings as we have entered the third dimensional vibratory reality of this world. We have become so identified with our story and our characters that we play on the stage of life that we simply overlook the radiant eternal presence of our being. Our radiant eternal being, the self, that which is closer than hand or foot, that which is the source by which you are aware of this moment and this sound right now. We have forgotten that we are standing or sitting on the stage of life right now. Is it possible that this is not only a metaphor? From the Book of Tokens, Ayin. It is the sun of life and light, shining through the 12 tribes of heaven and spreading their power through the tree of life to make all things new. Yet does every beam of that sun cast a shadow also? For in all creation are light and darkness mixed, and their equilibrium is the mystery of mystery. And from Jewels of the Wise on page 166. The deceiver presents to our attention a dual world wherein there could be both good and evil, in direct contradiction to God's word, after God had made the world and pronounced as good everything he had created. The Greek word from which the devil comes from means slanderer. I will add it also means accuser. And I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now is come salvation and strength, and the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ. For the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accused them before our God day and night. Revelations 12:10. Okay. Recall the path of Ayin is called the renewing intelligence. It connects the subconscious below on the cube to the western face of the third dimension, the Wheel of Fortune. On the path, we are waking up to realizing that there is always more than meets the eye of the surface appearance of things and living accordingly. It's not enough to just know this intellectually. We must live this accordingly. Live the wisdom that we know. This is how we make it more real and realize it. The path of Ayin is the first stage of spiritual unfoldment in the Book of Wisdom. The first stage of waking up from the dreams or Maya that is the western face of the cube of space. So remembering that this current is the subconscious current of the third dimension that we're in, we can see then that this current is pretty deep, vibrationally speaking. It's pretty heavy. It's associated with Capricorn, the zodiac sign, but it's also associated with mirth and laughter and lightness, because that goat climbs very high. So let's look at the deceiver key and simply state what we see and what occurs to us. If you would, please just unmute yourself at will. And anyone just go and say what occurs to you in this key.
They could take the chains off their neck because it's really loose and their hands are free.
Okay.
There aren't human feet, there are hooves. And what came to mind was the soul is not present. But I'm sure that it is in some sense, but it's perhaps not shining as it could.
And his head is the same shape as the star.
Yeah.
They're willingly chained.
Nice. Nice. Please, everyone, just keep going. You're doing perfect.
So the white goatee means this is God. And you have the upside down 5-pointed triangle inverted. So this is the misconception of reality. It's backwards. And we have white horns. Now that's most intriguing.
It is interesting.
So why are they the white horns as opposed to some other color?
That's a really good question. I like where you're going with that.
Well, I'm going to see if somebody else has something to say about that.
I'm curious about the all-seeing eye in the bottom.
Okay. What are you curious about?
I wonder what that one means. I wonder what that means.
What do you think it means?
It's the very bottom right. I don't know.
Yeah, well, right. So the letter Ayin here, the Hebrew letter, means I, right? That's the meaning of this letter.
Yeah.
But you should definitely meditate on the meaning of this
Okay.
and where else you see it in the tarot.
And it's also on a triangle,
Yeah.
which is most intriguing.
Yep. Sue, did you want to say something?
Mm-mm.
Oh, okay.
And the triangle always represents the law of how manifestation occurs.
Yep. And the number 3 is the black sphere of Vina,
Mhm,
understanding the
mhm.
divine mind. Because we memorize our simple tree now.
My left brain has always, since Margot has mentioned that in the Baphomet's beard is white, which indicates the presence of God.
Hmm?
But there is a beautiful psalm that says, if I make my bed in hell, thou art there.
Oh, yes.
Meaning,
Yes.
as Joel Goldsmith mentioned in every sentence he ever wrote, there is one power and one presence in all the
Yes.
universe.
Yep. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right, right. It says, yes, if I descend into Sheol, thou art there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's resting on a half a cube of space. In other words, it's not three-dimensional.
Right.
So the
Just kind of-
deceivers, you think this is all there is. And of course, his hand open, different from the teacher or the Hierophant, which has some part of it disguised. So this is to say, all you see is all there is. And then you have Saturn on his hand, which is a fixing element,
Yeah.
crystallized. And then you've got yellow and red over his, we talked about this though before,
Mm-hmm.
over his the center, not his heart, but his
Solar plexus and his
solar plexus. Yeah,
Mhm.
and it's Mercury.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and it's coming up from the genital area, right? This is
Mhm.
the right, the red is the color of action, activity, volition, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. So this is a pretty primitive, and this is our primal drives, right? This energy, this life force, everything is holy. This is one of the biggest teachings in the Western tradition that has been taught mostly in secret for centuries because people who would bring these things out it wasn't taken very well. But everything from the libido, the sexual energy, the primal appetites of the animal nature, all of these things are holy. It's how are we wasting this life force, or are we raising it, as we see here? When the star up here is inverted, it shows that we are not in mastery of the life force, right? It's kind of running the show in the animal nature of our being.
Mhm.
This is why the strength key is above this key in the 3x7 layout. But also, the shadow, once we see through the appearances of these things, we can see the divine behind it. And then we can act more, as the Buddhists say, skillfully in our actions. and responses to the world, right? We're not taking the world at face value. So at present, sorry, someone say something?
No.
Sure.
Well, regeneration is holy.
Yes.
Because without regeneration, we wouldn't have more lives to get our act together
Oh, yes.
and
Yes.
raise up. So
Yes.
this is holy, the regeneration.
Yes. Yep.
And only through that do we regenerate and become closer to God, to creation.
Right.
We just have to keep our eye
Mhm.
on light, our eye
Yes.
single, which
Yes. Yes.
Starlight brought up. Why is there
Yes.
one?
We don't keeping our eye single recognizes we see the divine in all things. We don't separate the kingdom of light against the kingdom of darkness. We recognize that all is light, all is vibration, all is one thing. So at present, according to science, our physical eyes pick up, here's a number for you, about 0.0035% of the known visible light spectrum. So I'm going to repeat that. 0.0035% of the visible light spectrum. Now that's just the light spectrum. How much do we see that we're looking right at in that 0.0035% that we can see? How much do we even see of what we're looking at? How present are we? How deeply are we looking at what we see? Right? Margot, you brought up how interesting the white horns are, right? I mean, remember, we always pay attention to what's white, right? Because we know what's connected to, on the tree, to the crown. So what about this?
Oh, very nice. The
Yeah.
moon.
Hmm. Hmm.
Very clever.
Always more than meets the eye.
Yeah.
So we see the horns on the head of the self-conscious and subconscious mind aspects in the 15th key. We see the crescents, right? Which we know are the tattva of water and the moon. So it can be helpful to remember we are multi-dimensional beings and are capable of seeing more than just with our physical eyes. We see much, much more with our mind's eye and our higher reason than with our physical eyes. But even greater than this, if we want to see truth, we must learn to see with our heart. The number 15 of this key reduces, you add 1 plus 5 and it reduces to 6, which is the heart of the tree, beauty, the sun and the Christ center. So repeating, we must learn to look and see with our hearts. Consider that this statement also is not a metaphor. We have simply forgotten that we can and do see more. It's on the more subtle inner planes of our being. Here's a small snippet from the Emerald Tablet. Thou shalt separate the earth from the fire, the subtle from the gross, suavely and with great ingenuity. This is the Emerald Tablet of Hermes Trismegistus, or Thoth. So, how often are we really looking at what is before us? Are we seeing what is before us in the present? Or are we seeing most things through the lens of our memory? That is one huge difference between being awake and being asleep. Being awake is questioning what we are seeing, really being curious and fascinated by what is before us. Margot, I'm getting a theme here. we every day though, because we live in a mind that so many people, it's easy to just, you know, veg out and stare out. Staying awake takes a conscious willingness and effort.
It's cultural. You live in a
Yes.
culture that defines the way you respond to things.
Mhm.
And if something new shows up on your radar, you may not even see it.
Right. Yeah.
So the idea is to question, what are you doing here? What's this? But we many times do not, because culturally, then maybe our friends won't like us anymore if we see something different than what they're seeing.
Right.
There's pressure for that. And so but as you grow closer to the light, you also grow closer to the trust of what you're really seeing, or question even more what you see. But culture, you've got to figure how many different places there are on the planet Earth that have diametrically different cultures from each other. And so people really see differently depending on where they were raised.
Yes.
So there's a lot to do with being able to see.
Mhm.
And we see more the more we practice. And tarot, one of the primary functions of the moon is the aspect of memory, is the high priestess, the subconscious, which is the foundation of the cube. Remember, our personal subconscious will believe whatever we tell it, because to our subconscious, everything is imagery. And it's charged with feeling, depending on our experience and the experience of the collective. So we know imagery is the language of the subconscious, and why the Book of Wisdom is written in this language. The difference is the Book of Wisdom is written in a way of true representation that assists us to remember through algorithms of truth what is real versus what we have imagined to be real. Can everyone mute themselves, please? If the deceiver is showing us how we are deceived by taking superficial appearances of the whole as the whole, then how can we discern what is real and what is true? Well, we always have assistance, and we'll pull up the discernment key and look at it next to the deceiver key. This is a really interesting combination. So the question really is, what is real, right? That's the question we all must answer for ourselves, not from what someone tells us, right? Because what people tell us is only so good. Unless we know it for ourselves, it's not ours. Kabbalah, tarot, tree of life, cube of space, are for those of us who wish to know for ourselves, and our soul simply isn't satiated or satisfied with intellectual explanations. So again, the question is, what is real? Remember, the number 15 reduces to number 6. So let's just look at these two keys side by side. And if each person would just briefly state one observance you see between the two keys, whatever occurs to you.
The males have fire and the females have fruit.
They're both mature, more mature.
They're more open in 6 and kind of more to each other.
And God is between them.
The subconscious mind, the subconscious, the female in 6 is looking to creation, to God. And in 15, she's not.
Yes, she's trancing out here, isn't she? She's just staring at that blank wall on the cave.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
And that being the subconscious mind, that's what you're going to get in your life.
Yes.
The angel has both hands raised, while on the deceiver card, one is raised and one is down.
Yep. This key, there's freedom.
Yeah.
And this key, there's bondage. And I love how the sun is almost showing all of its glory here in radiance. You still can't see half of it though. But here it's definitely just inverted and in symbolic form, very diminished.
She can see past the clouds.
Mm-hmm.
And he looks to her.
Right. So you can take these keys and study them in combination to help you get discernment about anything that you would like discernment about, especially if you feel that something's an obstacle for you, which is a lot of what this key is about. And simply asking the little mind, when I say that, I mean just asking our mind what is real, is one of the most powerful questions you can ask. Why is that? It's simply because asking the question forces the little mind to stop pretending it already knows the answer to this question. And it opens our little mind to the greater mind, to be receptive to receive the answer from self of what is real, just like she's receptive here to the self. And the self-conscious is in humility, looking directly into her eyes to get the reflection, to see through his inner self. This is the perfect state of harmony within our 3 aspects of our being. And this key is where we're a bit confused in our states of being.
The wings.
Remember, pardon?
I was just I'm fixating here on the red wings on the lover's key, which would symbolize action.
Yes.
And on the deceiver, they look like bat wings almost. They're not
Right. Like
they're
in a
flying
cave.
at night. They're not illumined, you know.
Yeah.
While the angel is definitely illumined, and there's action involved in bringing about some type of change or revelation or something.
It just came on the deceiver. You have the red eyes, which we haven't mentioned, and red being the color of activity. And it's, you can see, even if you can, through action, you will see, because it won't work. It's like baking a cake, you know? If you don't follow the directions, it's going to be flat. So you have the ability to see.
Yes. We just have to look.
Actively. Yeah, you have to ask, what is this? What's going on?
Yeah.
Instead of going, oh, well, I've seen that 20 times before. I know exactly what's going on.
Exactly. Exactly that.
And say maybe the 21st time you go, I'm going to question it.
Yeah. What do they call it? Beginner's mind. I think that's the practice, right? Yeah.
Question everything.
Right. So remember this, all is mind. As the Kabbalion states, all is mind. The universe is mental. Now, the more we attain liberation from identification with the appearances of things as if they are the whole picture, the more we help others not be bound by the appearances of things, because we have pierced the mass mind with the light of knowing, which comes from the real self and is real light. So this week, in addition to your nightly basic practice, here is a gift for you and many others who will benefit from this practice. Here is your gift. This is to be practiced in the spirit of service to others. This is a simple exercise you can do anywhere at any time in almost any circumstance to help others be released from any negative images they may think and or feel about themselves, or think and feel they may be bound by, both consciously and especially unconsciously. Do not tell anyone you are doing this. They don't need to know anything about this. You do not tell them what you are doing. You are only doing this practice on a mental and emotional level in your imagination. You are not asked to buy this. You can judge this or not judge this. Feel free. The important thing is that you only practice this and see what occurs to you by practicing this art of the Alchemical Cabala by visualization throughout this week, and keep a journal of what occurs to you. So here is your gift. When you see people this week you interact with, simply visualize loose chains being completely removed from their necks and wrists. Both wrists and their necks. Not tight chains, but chains. Just see them being completely removed. Do this week without judgment. And for everyone you interact with, not withholding your gift from anyone. Simply watch and see what you see. Watch how they respond. Watch everything they say and do. And be sure and write down what occurs to you. This practice is applicable to anyone you see, and especially anyone you perceive as suffering mentally or emotionally. Now, let me be perfectly clear on this. If you see anyone with clearly objective physical needs, assist them as appropriate, as you are able, and as you are guided from self. Example, you see someone hungry, obviously feed them or give them means as you are able. If someone asks you for anything you can assist them with, give it to them as you feel led by self. That said, this homework and gift is going to be a simple practice of visualization for anyone you interact with or see this week, whether you know them or you don't know them. This includes people you see on social media, people you know, people you don't know. Visualize loose chains being completely removed from their necks and their wrists. See them then as completely free from these imagined chains. Know in your mind, as these chains are released, that they are permanently dissolved by the golden light of the all good. If you feel inclined, speak in your mind or your heart inwardly that they are forgiven for anything and everything that they may be holding against themselves, and that they are forgiven for anything and everything held against them by anyone. If you like, you can visualize angels of light removing the chains and dissolving them in golden light, or see yourself as doing it in your imagination and handing them to the angels to deal with. If you prefer, see Christ or the holy guardian angel performing the same task. Just make sure you do this practice with everyone you interact with this week. As you practice this, just remember, all is mind. All is mind. All is mind. And the king shall answer and say unto them, verily I say unto you, inasmuch as ye have done it unto one of the least of these my brethren, you have done it unto me. Matthew 25:40-45. Thank you for your participation. This concludes lesson 9, the Alchemical Cabala, the Cuba space Ayin. The floor is now open for questions or comments.